Let's talk about Pride Month. Yes, it's June and it is Pride Month. Okay, it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I don't care. And that's the thing. So, it got me thinking on some things, though. And it's something that recently happened with me. I realized that Liberal Cabinet Minister Seamus O'Regan is gay. Oh, okay. I know it's not a profound revelation. It's been common knowledge for quite some time. And O'Regan hasn't made a secret of it. But despite myself being a rather avid political watcher, I actually didn't know O'Regan's sexual orientation. I doubtless must have run across references to it over the years, but it never really stuck in my memory because you know what? It doesn't matter. The only reason I suddenly noticed O'Regan's orientation was that he gave a rant in Parliament a few weeks ago about how people like him had rights suppressed in his lifetime. And I was wondering to myself, what the hell's this privileged white-bread man from Newfoundland going on about it? There wasn't much Irish oppression. I had to think about it and look into it. And then I realized, oh, he's not straight. Okay. Well, I'm utterly indifferent to O'Regan's sexual orientation, just as I am with everybody else's. And it's a great development, though, because things haven't always been this way. If you might remember some of the older political watchers, former NDP MP Sven Robinson, he was the first openly gay member to serve in Parliament when he came out in 1988. Now, for most of his term, whenever Robinson was mentioned in a news or commentary, his status as a gay MP was almost always mentioned. Not necessarily in a derogatory way, but it was considered an oddity. His sexual orientation ended up defining who he was in the public eye for most of his time in office, whether he liked it or not. At least until he was convicted of stealing a ring and was thereafter remembered as a petty thief. Canada's evolved a lot in the last few decades, and mostly for the better. Most of us don't reference a gay MP or a same-sex marriage anymore. It's just an MP, and it's just marriage. It's not a gay couple, it's just a couple. This is where we need to be. This didn't happen overnight, though. It took decades of effort from activists within and outside the LGBTQ community. The Pride movement was an integral part of what fostered the changes in societal attitudes towards LGBTQ people. I was dragged down to a Pride parade by a girlfriend in the late 1990s. And the reason I was dragged wasn't quite because I was terrified of gay people, but yeah, I was still awkward and squeamish on the issue, as most of the people who grew up in the 1970s were. When I went to school, I would have been sent to detention for swearing in class, but wouldn't have gotten much more than a finger wagging if I'd have called a fellow student a fag. The word was in popular use back then, even on TV and in movies, believe it or not. Spending a day around people from the LGBTQ community was good for me and helped me grow out of my intolerance. The term pride is appropriate for the movement, too. I mean, LGBTQ, boy, those letters get to me, though. We're constantly told they should be ashamed of who they are and that they should keep their sexuality hidden and suppressed. I can understand why they want to celebrate who they are loudly and without shame at events. So yeah, pride's the right word. Pride parades and gatherings allowed for that. It's come up to now, though. Sexual orientation is protected by law, and LGBTQ people enjoy all the same rights as straight people do. More importantly, most people have learned to set aside prejudices and accept people for who they are. Sure, there's still some acts of intolerance and some hateful people out there, but that's a dwindling subset of society. But this led to a different problem. This has left radical activists with a quandary. They've reached the goal line, but instead of being content and stopping, they're now continuing to push the line farther down the field. They're angry, they thrive on protest, and they're running out of things to protest for. That's why they're insisting on getting more militant at Pride events, and ironically exclusionary, as they're starting to pick and choose who's even allowed to attend them. People don't want to take their kids to a parade where a nude man is going to simulate sexual acts, as activists keep working to push the shock envelope. As the movement embraces more radical stances, they've begun eating their own. Edmonton canceled a Pride parade a couple of years ago because Black Lives Matter activists got upset. And Philadelphia had their Pride parade disrupted by the ridiculous Queers for Palestine movement. This week, Winnipeg's Pride parade was reportedly temporarily blocked by Queers for Palestine activists. Queers for Palestine. Really, guys, really think a little harder. And this was apparently in the traditions, this is their words, of two-spirit, queer, and trans resistance. What the hell does that even mean? Are we really expected to embrace and respect groups this nutty? It isn't enough to be tolerant or accepting anymore. Activists now are demanding open displays of support for their cause. Businesses are shamed if they don't have enough rainbow flag stickers on display, and public figures are called out if they dare miss even one of the many, many Pride events that happen in every city now. It really is reminiscent of the Seinfeld episode where Kramer wanted to take part in an AIDS march but didn't want to wear the ribbon. I don't know if you guys remember watching that. He was eventually chased by an angry mob for literally not wearing his allegiance to a cause on his jacket. The Pride movement went from being a brave minority, and they were, to becoming accepted by the majority to now starting to get dominated by a fringe minority. There's always room for a society to evolve further, and there's always going to be pockets of intolerance to battle. If the hill now, though, for pride activists to die on has become the perceived right for elementary school children to change their gender pronouns, I think we can safely conclude the pride movement has run its course. Maybe it's time to set that aside and move ahead.